Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? What you are about to witness is real.
This is not a dream, but a new beginning.
Stand by for uplink.
The Don Hanston Show, straight up.
Thank you.
GPS uplink now completed with Google Earth. Commencing the official countdown in 3, 2, 1.
And now your hosts, Don and Sal.
Welcome to Straight Up, the Don Hanston Show. Along with Don and our producer Marcel, I'm Sal. We got a great show lined up for you today. We're going to start out with these tariffs, which everybody is talking about. Seems to be the buzzword. Personally, Don, I'm kind of sick of hearing about the tariffs, but that is what's in the news these days. And it was announced this morning that Trump is going to strike back against China now and put an additional 50% increase of tariffs on China. I don't know if you heard that, but what are your thoughts about that?
Hey, the only thing I can tell you is all these other countries have been tariffing us, okay? And we haven't been tariffing them. And from what I understand, most of our tariffs are less than half of what they're tariffing us. So all these people, I think it's just all I believe that this is I think it's a good thing, but I think that the media has stressed so much on this that it's impacted the stock market, cryptocurrency, consumer spending, on all aspects. The economy's kind of been, crumbling, but it's an emotional thing, and it's created by the medias. And as far as this tariff thing goes, this is going to work out so beneficial for us that unfortunately, like we talked about a few episodes ago about hating Trump, anything against Trump. I believe that the media is used purposefully to try to destroy the economy, so then they can say it's Trump's fault. But it's going to be temporary because there's going to be an ultimate positive effect from these tariffs. So as far as I'm concerned, it's all noise, okay? But I was driving today, in the car. I had to go to a doctor appointment, natural doc, and nobody made sense on the road, okay? Everybody's, off in a cloud. The problem is, I know, they're watching TV. They're getting all upset. My 401k, what if I have to draw from my 401k or my pension when it's all deflated and all this stuff? And all this shit's just, I'm not trying to get off the tariff thing, but this is all just a scare tactic to try to, sidetrack the economy so they could say, look, Trump doesn't know what the fuck he's doing, and then try to get people pissed off at him. And so as far as the tariffs go, I think it's the greatest thing going. It's just, I explained to somebody just a few days ago, when something is in shambles, okay, things get worse before they get better. And I used an example. I said, if you're working on your home and you're going to remodel your kitchen, it's going to go from a kitchen that's operational to basically dirt and dust and no plumbing.
Right.
There's going to be nothing. You might be microwaving in the basement and washing your dishes in a wash sink, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. And I think it's the same thing with tariffs. Things are going to, they're going to get worse before they get better. Right now, I believe it's all emotional.
Yeah, I think so too. There was an economist that was on Friday that I was watching who said, and he's pretty respected in the industry. I've watched him a few times. His name is Seth Denson. And he had said, if you're worried about your 401k, he says, don't even look at it right now. Don't even waste your time and look at it. Just leave it. Just keep plugging away. It will get better. Just like Trump said on Air Force One on Friday, he said, we all have to just take our medicine and give it some time. And I think, I believe him. I mean, he's a businessman. I'm pretty sure he knows what he's doing. I, for one, don't know, how this is going to affect everything. I know prices are going to go up a little bit. How long is it going to stay up? I don't know. We have a lot of countries now, Don, that are not wanting to give us tariffs anymore. There has been 50 countries so far that have contacted the White House. They want to sit down and talk, like Saudi Arabia, Taiwan. They want to sit down and talk with Trump over the tariffs. So I think it's working. It's just going to take some time. But when you have the leftist media constantly pounding this, that prices are going up, the economy is tanking, you have the left, they're just looking for anything to go against this administration. So they're going to keep harping on it, saying this is like doom and gloom. The economy's going. The economy was great when Biden was in office. Well, that's just not the case because they had record jobs show last week with Trump. And, you would expect the jobs because look at all the auto industry now. They're coming back. Like Ford and GM are building their plants in the United States. That's going to be millions of jobs for people. And then you got other companies like Stellantis, who owns Jeep and Chrysler, and a few other companies that are saying they are not going to raise the prices of their vehicles, not pass it along to the consumers, which makes sense because everybody's going to be lowering their prices, and all of a sudden this line's going to higher their prices. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a lot of these companies have, in my opinion, gouged, right? They used the chain supply during the coronavirus to make everything go up, okay? All these excuses, right? This was inflated and that's why our price went up. Now it's going to be tariffs. But what I think it's going to do is it's going to create a lot more competition, okay? Because in my mind, okay, you can only sell something for what somebody is willing to pay, okay? Now, let's use your example of the auto industry. And I don't know. I don't even know what cars cost anymore, but let's just say a Jeep is $60,000, right? Now they move them in here to the United States and they don't want to charge more. So maybe they even charge less. Maybe they put it at $50,000, right? Well, then the next company that comes in, maybe it's GM, right? And they say, okay, well, we're going to have a similar type of car, but we want to sell more than them, so we're gonna price point at $47,000. Then you're gonna have Ford, and they're gonna come in and they're gonna say, you know what, we don't want to be the cheap guy in the block, but we want people to buy ours, so we're gonna price point it at $45,000. And what happens is it creates competition, and when you have competition, companies are forced, okay, to look at their costs and lower their costs in order to make their product sellable to the consumer, okay? And I think that it's going to create a lot more competition. So when that happens, things are going to get better. And as far as the tariffs go, by us imposing tariffs on these countries that have been imposing these tariffs on us, let's just say that they call up Trump and they said, we had a 25% tariff or a 50% tariff on your shit, and now you're imposing a 25% tariff, which is only half, and they say, you know what, instead of you charging us tariff, we'll forego our 50%. Well, that actually saved us more than us charging them the 25%. So, yeah. I mean, people are so short-sighted, okay? And it kind of reminds me of the medical industry. People want to take the magic pill because they instead of adjusting a diet for whatever, high blood pressure or, whatever their problems are, they'd rather take a pill, the simple fix. People want the simple fix, but they also are very short-sighted on getting to the end goal, on what it is that you want. You want things to be affordable. But instead, they look at it in the short term rather than the long term, and I think that that's what actually creates these problems for people, is when you look at things short term, you know how short term is, right? Hey, I'm going to give you this stuff for free. Well, we all know that nothing is for free, right? It's going to cost you more in the long run than if you just paid your fair share up front. So I think that ultimately, I know it's a mouthful of everything that I just said, but ultimately I think it's a good thing.
Well, they're also looking for someone to blame, too, and they're looking for anything with this administration that goes south to harp on it and blow it out of proportion because they really don't have too much to complain about. I mean, they're going to talk about the stock market, and you see a lot of the stock market, it's panicking right now, but that will level out. And I think the stock market overall is still up from where it was last year. If you look at the numbers, I believe it's still up. So the economy's still okay, but they're just looking for any reason to blame it on this administration. They're starting with the gang members, they're starting with the illegals, then they're moving on to this texting or this text thread that supposedly somebody was involved with Tim Walz and all them. They were harping on that for a couple of weeks. Now they're going back to the tariffs, complaining about that and watching the market. So they need someone to blame. But I agree, there is no quick fix. There is no pill to take to fix this. You have to give it time. It's like buying stocks. You can't just buy a stock and then get rid of it right away. You got to let it sit there for a while.
Simmer.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't understand why people don't see this. They see all like Netanyahu, Israel Prime Minister, is going to be at the White House today talking with Trump about the tariffs. He's saying he's not going to have any tariffs against the United States, and he's looking for some relief for his country, which I'm pretty sure Trump's going to give them because they're not going to impose any tariffs on us. So, I mean, there is strides being made here, and we are saving a lot of money and bringing a lot of jobs back to the United States, but the left doesn't want to see that. They don't want to talk about that. Not many places you're going to hear that.
So, yeah, I mean, you can have something that's awesome, right? And what you do is you deflect the energy out of like, wow, that was really done well. Instead of congratulating somebody, you can find 10 things that didn't go your way or that overshadow what ultimately should overshadow the bad things. So you can find a flaw in anything. And if you're looking for flaws, you're going to find flaws. Kind of like what I talk about, you get what you focus on, right? You want to focus on failures, you're going to find it, and that's what you're going to have as failures. If you're going to focus on positive aspects, right? Success, right? Then that's what you're going to have. And so the left wants to focus on the failures, right? So that's what they're going to have. And the right wants to focus on success. So guess what? That's what they're going to have. So It's all based on perspective. And I want to go off the news thing real quick. I had a conversation with a good friend of mine that had a trading business down at the Board of Exchange, Stock Exchange in Chicago. And during the last administration, the guy actually went broke. Okay, he said I couldn't make sense out of the stock market. Right. Well, he called me up just the other day and we were talking, and he says, I got, and this will be a topic for another show, but he goes, I want to tell you, and it was more information than what I could comprehend, but he said, what happened during the last administration is they printed all that money, and guess where all that money went? Okay, it went to the stock market. Okay, so all these companies, they went up, but they really didn't, because it was all hypothetical money. Okay, and so right now that was all manipulation of the market, and it was based on the money printing that made its way into the stock market. That's how a lot of people made money. But anyways, then you got a standard fool like me, right? I go and earn the stupid money, and then I put it in there to try and get some uptick on my profits that I've saved, and then it just goes because what you're doing is you're making sensible decisions. You're not going along with the manipulation that we're not privy to the information. And he said, what's funny is right now, he goes, the stock market makes sense to me again. And I said, well, you think about getting back into the business? And he said, absolutely not. He goes, because I'd have to be all in, and he had to get, and he was a heavy duty earner, so he had to find a job that at least paid well, right? And so it wasn't going to pay the millions that he made, but it pays well. He goes, I'd have to go all in, and I have to quit my job. And he goes, I'm not interested in going back into that. Yeah. But anyways, I thought it was very interesting his theory on the stock market, because he goes, and he can explain it. So I'm thinking we're going to have him as a guest on the show.
Oh, that sounds good. Yeah, I think I heard that the dollar's actually worth about 77 cents right now. Still trying to come out of this problem that you just brought up from the last administration. Well, that's an interesting take. He doesn't want to get back into it. You know what? To some extent, I don't blame him. Because we don't know how the midterms are going to go. We don't know how the next election's going to go in 2028.
If you get these retards back in, I mean, they can fuck the whole thing up again if they go in with this, elite program or this globalist, economy or whatever kind of crap they're trying to do.
Yeah.
But anyways, I was looking at some articles this morning, and one thing that caught my eye was a story in Israel. I don't know if anybody heard about this. It's kind of a fresh one. That Israel admits to killing some aid workers. I guess what they did was they killed some. They fired on emergency vehicles and they said it was an accident. Well, I guess there was some cell phone footage recorded by one of the victims, okay, that contradicts it. And it clearly shows flashing emergency lights, clearly displaying the vehicles as ambulance and fire trucks during the attacks, okay? The head of the UN agency in Palestine says the bodies had bullets in their chests and heads, and they were executed. Their hands were tied, and Israel denies. But anyways, there's footage where one of the workers' last words were reportedly, "Forgive me, Mom. I just wanted to help people. I wanted to save lives." I'm not an emotional guy. It brings tears to my eyes. This guy's out there trying to help people, and he gets fucking executed. And you know what? I don't want to be labeled as anti-Semitist or whatever. But when you're executing people that are trying to help people, they're not fighting. They're not soldiers. And you don't just, even if you accidentally killed them, it's awful. But you execute these people, like, how are we on the same side with this? How this is what we stand for? I mean, because we back Israel. Now, I don't really know, because I don't really get in all this, the Zionists and all this over there. But all of this stuff needs to stop, okay? And we need to quit backing this crap up, because this is a bunch of shit. People getting executed. I don't care if it's one guy. A guy's trying to help people, and his last words were, "I just want to save lives."
Yeah.
And that's him going out. It makes me want to cry, I'll be honest with you.
Well, we have to be cautious and make sure that that's legit, because Israel is denying it, you said?
They're not denying it. They're not denying it.
Oh.
They're saying that it was an accident.
Oh, okay.
So they say it's an accident, right?
Okay.
And then there's cell phone footage of this.
Gotcha.
Okay. So is the story accurate? Obviously, I know anything can be manipulated.
Right.
Somebody could put something on the phone and send it in, and I understand, especially with AI and all the fucking nonsense that's going on right now. It's very possible, but I mean, the stuff that I'm seeing, from different avenues, I'm kind of seeing the same thing. I'm seeing that there's a troublemaker, and we're backing him up. And I don't really know for a fact, but it looks pretty legitimate to me.
No, see, I was under the impression Israel was denying it. I didn't catch that you had said that they said it was a mistake. So
no, they said it was an accident.
So
they admit
they are claiming it. Then it did happen. So yeah, that's not good. I mean, I know you always have this in war, in a sense. You always have friendly fire, but if they're tied up, bound, handcuffed, or whatever, and then executed like that with all the bullet holes in them, that's we can't have that. And being a cop, one to the head, one to the chest, that's execution style, right? Yeah. That's how they take people out. And I mean, that's always been the case. You get the chest, the head, you're done. And so it's not like, we accidentally shot him in the head and then we accidentally shot him in the chest and the thing around their hands. Yeah, we're not sure how that happened. So whether or not it's true, I mean, it's a sad story. I hope it's not true, but unfortunately I do think it is. Well, it sounds like what the reporting is by them saying it was a mistake. Yeah. It sounds like
it kind of reminds me of a white lie. It kind of reminds me of somebody that's guilty of doing something, and they tell all the pieces to the story that they know they're connected to, except for the little thing that they left out. That we left out that we tied their hands and we shot them in the head and the chest. And my dad used to say that. He says, how these guys get away with a lot of this stuff. He goes, they tell the smart ones, the smart criminals, they tell the truth about every single thing except for the small part that incriminates them. Yeah. I saw this person and I knew this person, and yes, I was in this location, and all these things that could potentially tie them to that, because then they trip them up. If they show them as a liar, now nothing is credible. But if they tell the truth about everything except for the things that incriminate them, they usually get away with it, because it's like, well, their track record is they've told the truth about everything else. So what makes you think this isn't the truth, you know?
Well, maybe there'll be a press conference today, because usually when a leader goes and meets Trump at the White House, he usually opens it up to the public and then they take questions. Maybe someone will ask Netanyahu about that and see what he has to say. I'll keep an eye on that if I see as I watch some of the programming later today. But that's definitely an interesting story, and a terrible story at that.
And I'm glad that you pointed it out, that if in fact that is true, because we see, and I say all the time, I say, you know, when we look at or we listen to any type of media, okay, you have to understand that you know, where was this information created? What was the data that created this information, right? So I don't really have any raw data. I just read and I saw some phone footage, you know, on video. But aside from that, I don't have raw data, so I can't say, yes, this is absolutely 1,000% accurate. So
Right.
I'm glad you called me out on that.
Well, it's not so much calling you out. It's just that, you know, we did get an email, you know, from a gentleman actually out of Tennessee, but I'll read that later. But, I mean, you know, I don't want people to sit there and say, a lot of the stuff that I report, that I give you a little thing on, I always like to vet it. I always like to back it up if somebody were to ask me. I'm a big person with sourcing it. And, you know, it's funny. I had a conversation this weekend talking with someone who really is kind of, I think, leans right. And I said, I just don't understand some of these people. You know, they just come up with these lies. They hear something, they come up with these lies. You know, that Elon Musk is stealing. He's stealing your Social Security number so he could steal your money. And I said, I don't understand. They hear it on like CNN, MSNBC, and they just think it's gospel. This person, gotta give her credit. She says, well, isn't that kind of like what you do sometimes? You'll sit there and hear something on Newsmax or Fox and you'll put it as gospel. And you know what? That's a very interesting point. But what I said was, I always like to go beyond that. If I hear something, I like to do a little bit more research on it and make sure that that's what I'm hearing. You know, like getting back to what we've talked about before is common sense. Do we have common sense? I mean, what is the common sense that Elon is stealing our Social Security numbers so he could steal our money? The guy has all the money. He has enough money. You know, and even if he wasn't in this position, the power he has being worth over $600 billion, I'm sure he can get all our Social Security numbers anyways if he wanted them.
600 billion.
600 billion, and they're saying
he could give me one of those and he'd still have 59, right?
Yeah. Well, I heard, I don't think I brought this up, but I heard some, and once again, rumor, I don't know if it's true, that Elon could buy every major sports team in the United States, every league, every team, and still have billions left over. That's how much money.
Oh, of course.
I mean, it was an interesting point. You know, yeah, we hear something, and, you know, it's got to be sourced as well. Just because I hear something from Fox or Newsmax doesn't mean that I'm going to say that's accurate. But I am going to do a little bit of research on it, you know, like we prep for the show. So it wasn't really calling you out. I was just making you aware, telling you that it does go on both sides, because it was brought to my attention this weekend, which I thought was interesting.
But I agree with that. I agree with, like, saying, you know, Don, how do you know this is credible information? I agree with that, like, because there's so much information out there. How do you pull apart what's true and what's not, and what's completely accurate and what's not? And there's so many twists and turns, and you know, with how far left the left is and how far right the right can be. I mean, they're pulled in such, you know, far directions apart, right? Yeah. And a lot of people say, "Oh, you got to go here and you got to go here," and it's the truth is somewhere in the middle. I don't even agree with that. Yeah, I don't. But how do you decipher, right? And I think you're right. I think that the way that you decipher is you get as credible of information as you can. Somebody that is deemed as a truth teller, okay? And you trust what they're saying, and then you use some logic, right? Use a little bit of logic. Maybe you read a little bit deeper. Maybe you look up some information, and you know, how do you actually gain raw data, right? I mean, I guess that would be
you go back in history and look at other reports. You know, wouldn't that be something to do too?
Yeah, I mean, you could actually read a bill, right? Read a bill instead of people saying, "Oh, this is what it says." Yeah. The problem is that they've manipulated these bills where they put, you know, 1,500 pages, and it take you half a year to read it, and 3 years to comprehend it, that it's a waste of time. Then you find out that, on page, 1493, Nancy Pelosi, gave herself $2 million for her ice cream inventory. I mean, like, it's just nonsense, But
well, there was a video of her from I don't know if it was the late 80s or early 90s, where she was talking about we had to raise the tariffs on China. It's actually a pretty good clip of her on the floor saying that they need to do everything that Trump is doing right now. It's kind of funny because whatever she's saying right now is what Trump's saying now, and what the left is completely against and saying it's wrong. He's ruining the economy. Well, one of their own years ago was saying the same thing.
But I think that's a commonality within politics. I think, whether they deem themselves as a racist. I'm just using that because it's a hot point.
Yeah.
And then later on, they're calling other people racist. But then you pull up a clip of them, 10 years ago, and they're saying exactly what this other person's saying, and you're like, well, wait a minute, you were the racist, you know what I mean, or
right.
Whatever. They constantly. It reminds me of a chameleon. They constantly change colors.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
that's exactly what they're doing.
And they're chameleons, and they're a lot of them are slime, and they're going to say whatever they can to create whatever credibility they possibly can, or deflect, or to reverse the situation so they're no longer guilty. And it's just the whole thing is so convoluted that modern day politics. All it is just mostly just corruption is all it is. I mean, it's criminal activity. 90% of the politics nowadays.
And that's why I'm waiting for term limits. It was something that Trump did bring up on the campaign trail, and I have not heard a word of that since he became president and was sworn in. But I'd like to see him follow through on that, and I'd like to see him go through Congress to pass that. This way, then it's a law. But I don't think Congress is going to pass that. Why would they?
So, Sal, it feels like we didn't really touch hardly any topics, but it looks like we only got a few minutes left here.
We do. You're right. We only have a few minutes. And with that, would like to remind everybody to give us an email, especially if they disagree with us. Straight up, DonHanstonShow@gmail.com. We did get one comment. One email came in. I believe it was Friday afternoon. There's a guy named Rudy out of Tennessee, I believe Memphis. He said he's worried about the tariffs. And, of course, I disagree with both you guys as usual. He says, prices will go up. Both of you will see. Which, you know what, that's fine. And that's and I'm glad that he did email us this, because I am not here, and I'm pretty sure Don is not here, to try to tell anybody how to think or what to do. All we're trying to do is bring up some stuff, and you make the decision. You go out there and do the research. Use Google. Use everything you can that you have available to you to make an informed decision. And I want to make that clear. I think the mantra of this show is not to tell you this is what's going on and that's it. We're not giving you gospel. We're giving you something to think about, and then go do the research yourself and base your own opinion on what you find out. And I think, Don, you would agree with me on that.
Well, yeah. I mean, this show is not about mind control, right?
Yeah.
It's not about hypnotism. It's not about brainwashing. It's about us sharing our perspectives, and hopefully we interject enough logic in it to where maybe it does make sense. But of course, people have alternative thoughts, right? And of course, no two people think the same. So even people that think that they like what we say, I'm sure there's a lot of people that question different things, and like you said, how do we know the story is true, or how is that credible, or, I don't know. So that's why I try to base it on my experiences, because if I base it on my experiences, you can say, well, we still don't agree with that. That's Don's perspective, and that's fine. But I really don't care how people think. I just think that sometimes when you say certain things, it opens up people's awareness a little bit, and they're capable of seeing the truth a little bit easier than they were when they were completely brainwashed. And no offense, dude, but I'm not saying you're brainwashed, and maybe prices will go up. I don't know, but it is what it is.
Well, we'll be the first to call him. Like I said, I have no problem being critical of the Trump administration. I have no problem if I think things are not going right. one more thing came out, and I'm only going to touch on this briefly, and maybe we can get into it. There is a report that a new video has surfaced of the JFK assassination, and supposedly it's a pretty good, credible video of moments before Kennedy was assassinated, before he was shot, and the video shows what they believe is Oswald standing near the motorcade. Now, supposedly Oliver Stone, who did JFK, has a copy of this. They're trying to get a hold of it. But if that's the case, if that really is Oswald near the limo when it was going by right before he got shot, that would take him out of the picture. Also, they have some documents in there that says a lot of workers at the depository said they never seen Oswald in the building, coming or going. So that's something we're going to dive into maybe next episode. Hopefully I get some more information. Want to thank everybody for joining us again. Once again, hit that subscribe button. It's right there. Hit the bell so you're notified when we have new episodes posted. Check us out now on Pandora, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and also SoundCloud. And if you don't like what we're doing or you love what we're doing, give us an email. It's straightupdonhanstonshow.com, and check out our website, straightupdonhanstonshow.com. Once again, thanks for joining us, and we'll check you out next time.